and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousSKRO. That's Brian Twining, here to talk about the Hollywood Casino 400. We are headed to Kansas, Brian, and it's another round of the 8 as the NASCAR playoff rolls along. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I mean the name of this race is a little confusing. Hollywood Casino in Kansas. The two cities or states could not be further, separated in terms of everything that we know about them. But going to this track here, I'm really excited to see what we're gonna get. There's a lot on the line for a lot of drivers. But
Yep.
I mean, we can't continue forward without looking back and just mentioning again how dominant Kyle Larson has been this year, and why it took us so long to jump on his train for like DraftKings, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely riding the wave. We kind of I especially as for me, I'm a fade the popular option, fade the public, and sometimes that's not the right move. So, as you mentioned, we are down into the Elite Eight. We have this week, we have next week. That's it. Kyle Larson has won. He is moving on. Currently, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Busch are 2, 3, and 4 with Chase Elliott, Brad Keselowski, Party Marty, and Joey Logano on the outside looking in. Obviously, this is a big week. Next week at Martinsville is a big week.
Yes.
And then we're into the Final Four, and then we're basically 2 races away, and we're talking Phoenix, we're talking the championship, we're talking me cashing that Kyle Larson 12-1 ticket from way back in the day. Assuming everything keeps cruising along at its proper altitude, as we saw last year, no matter how good we feel about a driver going into that Final Four, there's a chance for wonky stuff to happen, crazy things to happen, and for it to all get jumbled up and spit out a different way.
Yeah, I mean, in a one race scenario, especially at the end of the season, to me, it just brings about the possibility of guys driving a little reckless or, purposely doing things that they would not normally do during the season. So it definitely brings about some interesting tactics for that last race. So it's been a nice change.
Yeah, especially for the ones that have to win. Like, you have to win to advance. So currently Larson is your favorite, plus 150 to win the Cup. Hamlin right behind him, plus 450. Ryan Blaney at 5-1, Kyle Busch at 650, Chase Elliott at 8-1 is kind of a nice number. If you believe you think he has a shot to win one of the next 2 races, you could absolutely see him roar back. And we saw last year what he did. Party Marty, Martin Truex, 12-1. We like him at Martinsville. Could be an interesting number. Brad Keselowski at 16, and then Logano at 28. So any of those numbers jump out to you as extreme values?
So I'm looking with Chase Elliott and Martin Truex right there. I mean, I think Truex, who has been really good at these next 2 tracks, Kansas and Martinsville specifically, he's been really good there. So I think that there's a good shot that he's in that Final Four. And then, of course, Chase Elliott, he's one of the best drivers on the in the series. Yeah. So I think that anytime you can get him at such a big number, I think you should probably jump all over that.
Yeah, I think I am going to take Truex at that 12-1 because I do have the Larson. I'm looking to, not necessarily hedge, but a good opportunity to jump in on a driver that I believe in, that I think could win the Cup and has a good chance to win either this weekend or next. And, if he makes the Final Four, those numbers are getting cut in half at the least, probably something like 3 or 4-1. So it's a good opportunity to get some value. And as good as I feel about Larson, I like to have a little bit of a something else to lean on. But Brian, let's jump into it. Let's do what we always do, and let's take a look at that betting board and see if we can find value. So yeah, we're at Hollywood Casino up in Kansas. Kyle Larson is the dramatic favorite at plus 240. I did build most of this last night, so I might refer to DraftKings and update lines as necessary. It looks pretty spot on still, so don't think there's any major changes. Obviously, things will move. But Brian, on initial look, on initial leans, where is your mind? Where is your dollars potentially going this week?
Well, I mean, I won't be betting this because it's so short. But I mean, Kyle Larson at 2.5 to 1. Like I said, this guy is not taking the foot off the gas pedal. He's going full bore every race, trying to absolutely destroy the field. So I can't fault anybody for backing him once again going into this race.
And that's a conversation we had last week, right? We're like a plus 340. I don't want to do that. Brian's like, well, it's not that. I mean, and I'm like, no, it's I can get some other guy that I like to get a top 5, the top 3 to top 5 or top 3, and they didn't top 5 or top 3, and Kyle Larson won the race. So I was not the one cashing that ticket. So Larson is absolutely worthy.
It's just hard to get to that number though. For
100%.
to win, it's such a large field. I mean, to predict the winner, that number is so short.
So if not Larson, then who?
I mean, he's the same odds as he has for the Cup Championship, and that's Chase Elliott 8 to 1, and then Truex at 11 to 1. I mean, both of these guys are fairly good at Kansas. And everyone is in a must-win situation over these next 2 races. And all of these guys, besides Kyle Larson, are in a scenario where they do not want to go into Martinsville needing a victory to get into the Final Four. So I think all of them offer good value because they're all going to be pushing towards the front. But for me, it's definitely Elliott. And then I'll take the risk with Truex one more time, even though I got burnt last week. But I do think that there's a good shot that he's running near the top this weekend.
100%. Kyle Busch provides some value, 6 to 1. This is a guy in the last 3 October races has finished 2nd, 3rd, and 5th. Is in the heart of the playoffs. A win would lock him up and get him onto the next round. Has been running really, really well and traditionally performs really well at Kansas. Coming off of a win back in May at this track. That does a lot of things that interest you, that tickle your fancy. We'll talk placement here in a second. I'm not sure. Like the only other outright that even interests me really is Ryan Blaney at 10. I always gravitate towards him, but always runs really well at this track. Is in contention. If we want to get crazy, we'll talk about it here in a bit, but Alex Bowman's number is compelling to me.
Yes.
And we might have to go not look at, as impressive as the 30 to 1 is, you can get it plus 350 for a top 5. I like that a lot. But this is a driver that just does well. Obviously his May race was not great, but last October started 6th, finished 3rd. Back in May of 2019 started 5th, finished 2nd. Has improved on pretty much all of his races except for one back in July of 2020, which is a weird year. But I just think a guy who's progressing the right way, who's driving really well, and despite not being in the playoffs anymore, is still running really well, still in contention, and wants to set a good tone for next year. So he's somebody that if you want to get real aggressive, could make some sense.
Yeah, I mean, everyone will see the reason why we're talking about Bowman right now, but I think too, guy like Kevin Harvick, he still has yet to win a race this year, and you're talking about the guy who over the last 10 races here at Kansas has the best average finish of 5.5. I mean, 2 victories.
Harvick and Keselowski are the 2 old dudes.
I won't touch Keselowski.
We've talked about this season are really likely, much more likely for top 5s than outrights. But Keselowski at plus 175 and Kevin Harvick at plus 230 to top 5 might be 2 of my favorite bets on the whole weekend because, I agree. In terms of production, in terms of previous history, these guys are incredible and have run really well and should be in consideration for the numbers that they are currently posted at. But we've also been watching them all year not really compete, but sort
Yeah,
of
they don't have
compete.
that top speed to get to the top of the field. I mean, like
Yeah.
when you look at Harvick, 5 of the last 6 races, he's finished inside the top 10, and 2 of the last 4, he's finished inside the top 5. And then when you go over to Keselowski, who, I mean, it's been feast or famine with him, basically. I mean, 4th at Texas. Prior to that, it was a 20th at the Roval, and then 2 top 10, 6th and 7th place finishes. So he's another guy who he can boom or bust each week, but with their previous success at these tracks, and especially Keselowski leaving Team Penske, going over to Keselowski Roush Fenway or whatever the hell it's going to be. At those big numbers, if you want to do a little bit of change on that for an outright, I can't fault anybody for doing that, but don't get crazy with those guys.
Yeah, I agree. The number is what it is for a reason, but it's very, very compelling and something I could absolutely get down on. Any top 10, top 20 bets you're looking at? Anybody longer shot? I guess we could head over to DraftKings and then wrap back if you want to do that.
Well, I mean, looking at the top 10 market, like we said, a guy like Alex Bowman, who he's minus 125, and that's kind of his normal running standing, is right near the top 10. You're just inside, just outside the top 10. And yeah, he's had some bad luck of late, but he's a good enough driver that he should be running near that part of the field. So getting pretty close to even money for that. I like that number. There's another one I was really looking at inside the top 20 market. There's a few names, actually. I mean, Corey LaJoie, the dude is constantly finishing low 20s. So he's always a threat to crack that top 20, and he's plus money this week, plus 130. So I like that number quite a bit too.
Yeah. Heading over and looking at the driver matchups, Alex Bowman is plus 105 versus Christopher Bell. I would smash Alex Bowman there. Chris Buescher versus Eric Almirola. I like Chris Buescher a lot this week, minus 110. Keselowski minus 120 versus Logano. I like that. I like Chase Briscoe. Do I like Chase Briscoe? No, I don't like Chase Briscoe. Martin Truex plus 100 versus your boy Willie Byron. Like, that's compelling.
That's a hard one for me to get behind because I do like William Byron so much. But yeah, I like Truex's chances, especially being in the playoffs. Like he's going to have to push to the front of the pack, which again, we've talked about this before. It actually brings about more like danger in terms of crashing out or, damaging the car or, affecting them negatively than the guys that aren't racing for a championship, because they don't have to worry about the consequences and are probably less likely to push as hard.
Yeah. So a couple groups I like. I like Alex Bowman at plus 290 in a group with Harvick, Tyler Reddick, and Christopher Bell. I think that makes a lot of sense. Man, that's tough. The William Byron, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex, Joey Logano group. Like I feel like there's a name in there I really want to say, but like the other names around it, I don't.
Well, I mean, and even the top group that they have listed: Hamlin, Busch, Elliott, Blaney. You have a love affair with Ryan Blaney. He's 3-1.
I do, but I think Kyle Busch is the smash in that.
Well, I mean, that's a play. Maybe you and I can go head to head there. You take Busch, I take Elliott.
Yeah, I mean, we could go a little halvesies. I'll take Busch and Blaney. You take Hamlin and Elliott. We'll call it a day.
No, there you go. And then we wind up
write
that
down. We'll see who's a winner at the end of the race. Let's shift over. Let's talk a little DK, because I think DK is going to be a lot of fun this week. Whether you want to go up to the top like I do, and kind of work your way down, or if you want to start, there's a lot of really interesting value. So Kyle Larson, obvious smash. He's going to be really expensive, but I think that's going to help depress some of his ownership this week. I think he makes a ton of sense, and after what we saw last week, I wasn't going to cash in a couple tournaments, and then because I had Kyle Larson, I basically he scored 156 points last week. I think that's something that's absolutely in play again this week. I think he could dominate from the jump and run really, really, really well. If you're not starting with him, if you want to pivot off of him, Brian will give you a name here in a bit, but I do think Brad Keselowski at 9,100, who's starting third, makes a lot of sense, and I think he could absolutely win this race. Probably more like a top 3, top 5, but I think he could lead a lot of laps, be really competitive, and then maybe falter a little bit down the stretch, but I think he could perform really well. I think Alex Bowman is a must play this week. He's going to be chalky, but I think it's for the right reasons.
Yes.
Decent form. His last race started 25th, finished 18th, 6th to 3rd, 6th to 8th, 16th to 11th. Like he 2nd to 5th, or 5th to 2nd rather. This is a guy that just constantly progresses, constantly moves up. Runs really, really, really well. Parker Kligerman, I probably butchered that last name. Sorry, Parker. At 7,100 is compelling. This dude's starting 40th. He's ran this race a bunch. There was like a break from 2014 and he came back in 2018. Not really sure what happened there, but this is a guy who has finished better than he started. Started in the 30s and finished in the 20s. I'm not asking him to win the race, but if he starts 40th and finishes 22nd, I'm loving life. I think he can absolutely do that. And Corey LaJoie at 5,500. If you want to play someone like Kyle Larson, you're going to have to get to someone like Corey LaJoie. There's a few other really cheap options that I like, but I'll let Brian run through his core before I show those off. So, Brian, break it down and talk to me about why you're going to Chase Elliott at 10K.
Well, I mean, he's consistently finishing inside the top 10, and to be more specific, inside the top 6. He's done that 5 of the last 6 races here at Kansas. He had a decent run last week at Texas, and like I said, he does not want to go into Martinsville needing a victory or one of those top finishes. So I think he pushes towards the top. He's starting 5th, so I like him to maybe get up there early, compete with Larson, lead some laps, and then maybe take home the victory. Just like Kyle, Alex Bowman starting 25th. The guy has all the tools in the toolbox to move up inside the top 10. I like him the top 10, so I mean that's a tremendous value for so many movement points. Tyler Reddick, a guy who is on another one of those fire streaks where consistently finishing inside or right near the top 10. I think it's like 3 of the last 4 races he's finished inside the top 12. 8,400. I think that's a good value for somebody that should give you around 30 to 40 points. And then Cole Custer, he hasn't been great, but he's been decent here at Kansas. He's got 2 finishes inside the top 15. He's got a top 10 here 3 years ago, and he's finished inside the top 20 3 straight races. So he's been running pretty well. He's starting 22nd, and at just 6K, I like the possibility of giving me 20 to 30 points.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good call. I like the Reddick call quite a bit. He's a little more expensive, starting a little closer than some people may feel comfortable with, but I think that's something that makes him a compelling option. Started 11th, finished 7th last time. Had a bad race back in October 2020, but before then started 13th started 23rd, finished 13th, and started 21st and finished 9th. This is a guy that progresses, a guy that I think is trending in the right direction, and I think will very much be in the conversation, maybe not to Final Four to win the Cup next year, but he'll definitely be a playoff team. He almost did it this year, and I think he makes a lot of sense. A few things, Brian. I think if you're starting at the top, I think it's Larson, or you dive down to Elliott, Blaney, Keselowski. I think that's I know Kyle Busch is compelling, but I don't
honestly. Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think this is a week where you couldn't stack 2 of the top 5 guys in terms of salary, just because like these are all playoff guys and they're all going to be running near the front, and you're going to be racking up probably those fastest laps, those laps led, and all that kind of stuff. So this is a race where you're going to see a vast difference in lineups. It's not going to be a super chalky kind of race, I don't think.
Yeah. And if you want to save Corey LaJoie, I think makes sense. Brian mentioned Cole Custer. Eric Jones is always an option. It's gross, but at 6,100, starting 17th, performs well at these tracks. I also think Chris Buescher is absolutely in play at 6,300.
Our boy, Chris Buescher.
Look at his numbers. Like the last race here, started 16th, finished 6th. has had some progression races. Started 26th, finished 13th, started 18th, finished 10th, started 21st, finished 16th, starting near the back. If he moves up, runs a good, decent race, I think you're going to be very happy to have him. And if you want to, like Brian said, like I'm building some lineups right now where I start top heavy and I go, either Larson, Keselowski or Larson, Blaney. You're going to have to find some salary savings, and drivers like Jones and LaJoie and Busher and Cole Custer are going to make that lineup a lot easier to construct with the rest of your slot. So I think that makes a ton of sense.
One guy too I want to mention, Justin Haley. We've talked about him at numerous other tracks. This is a guy who's finished in the top 10 in all 3 Xfinity races. This year he ran 30th in the Cup Series. He's starting 33rd. He's only $5,800. He's shown the goods to finish inside the top 20, even get near the top 10. So I think, driving for Colleague Racing or what is he, Spire this week probably?
Yeah.
He's shown the ability to get up into the 20th range. So starting 33rd, $5,800. I love the value here with Haley.
Yep. And then if you want to, avoid the top and the bottom, which I think might actually, be an interesting play. You could stack some of your Bowman. Like I have a lineup right now. I started Keselowski, Reddick, Blaney, Bowman, and I still have almost 7K for my last 2 spots. Something I like quite a bit. So,
well, let's just say my first lineup I built, I'm leaving 3K in the bank. So
you are a lot more risk averse than I am, sir. I'm leaving about 500. I went Larson, Bowman, Keselowski, Kligerman, Busher, LaJoie. I love it.
Well, let's just say I'm probably going too far towards the risky side, because I used to be the person that made a concerted effort to fill my roster and utilize all of my bank. So now I'm probably going the opposite direction. Like I'm trying to save as much as possible by getting the best value. So
right, but that's all. But that's all about contest, right? If you're doing a tournament with a lot of entries, going the way Brian's going makes a lot of sense. If you're doing cash lineups and 50-50s and a bunch of smaller stuff, then going to those safer plays, you don't have to be that different. So it's all about knowing the contest. I highly suggest, I've been doing this recently and I've been liking it a lot more. Find the contest first, then build the lineup to go with it. Don't just build a lineup and then start firing it off in tournaments, in cash, in this and in that, because rarely is that crossover going to work, basically.
Yeah, and then for me, because I'm just kind of like a novice DK player, like I'm not entering a ton of contests. I don't understand how these people think that they're good when they're max entering into 150 max entry contests and they're just making 150 different lineups. Like that's chance. One, that's not enjoyable to me, but 2, if you go into the contests that have less entries as far as the maximum limit, you are giving yourself a better chance of winning by going with these lineups like I did, saving 3K, because in all likelihood, most people aren't going to get to those lineups if they have such a short pool to work from in terms of their max entries.
Yep, totally agree. Okay, Brian, we talked some betting, we talked some DK. That leaves us one thing and one thing only. What's your best bet for the Hollywood Casino 400?
Well, I'm not going to say it's safe per se, but I'm riding with Chase Elliott this week. I really think that Chase is going to find his way up near the front of the pack. I'm going to go Chase Elliott top 3 at plus 230. I mean, it's not safe, but it's also not that risky for a guy that's as good as he is. So yeah, Elliott top 3 plus 230.
Yeah. So if you want to be safe, Alex Bowman top 10 is the play. I am going to go Big Bad Brad. I am going Keselowski top 5 at plus 175. Very
good luck to you, sir.
I appreciate that. I like riding with the gross guys that Brian doesn't like, because it usually works out well for me. So good luck this week. Good luck with your DraftKings. Good luck with your bets. And we will be back next week with a very special Halloween edition.
Yeah.
Of
I'm
the
excited for that
podcast. We'll talk to y'all next time.